Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Survivor 50 Wishlist podcast, a series where I am going through the cast of every season of Survivor and trying to determine who could and should be considered for a very realistic, but in this case, very metaphoric season 50 on the horizon. Of course, today, even though we are talking Earth's last Eden, this is the 17th podcast in this series, as we are going HG for the first time in Survivor history. And if you took a look at the gameplay of Survivor Gabon, you could certainly describe it as high def. And we're going to get into all the highs and lows as we comb through one of the most chaotic casts in Survivor history. And I think it's incredibly appropriate that I do bring on somebody who brings the chaos on Survivor Twitter while the season is on. Very well represented. And this is a guy whose bread and butter is the challenge here on Rob Has a Podcast. And I would say, Brian Cohen, that maybe Gabon at its spiciest might invoke, some of the knockdown, drag out verbal fights we've had in challenge seasons past.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to talk about this season. This was like the first, the peek behind the curtain is like Sam Moore asked like what seasons people wanted to do. My first thought was to do Philippines again because that was the one I did for going back through the season rankings. And then I was like, you know what? Season 46 was the Gabon of the new era. And I got tossed in the mix of like the Gabon of RHAP a little bit. So like, you know what? This is the perfect season for me to talk about. So I'm so excited to get into this season. There's so many people I kind of forgot about. Obviously, there's the core people we all know and love. I'm very excited for this.
Well, especially because this is going to be a very rarefied look at a very rarefied cast because, yes, we have had a few individuals come back, but not to spoil our analysis of the cast too much, but I'm pretty sure, Brian, that everyone who has been asked back from Survivor Gabon does not want to play in a metaphoric season 50. So this is an opportunity for us to, I think, really crack open a bunch of people that have not been brought back from their time in the heart of Africa, which is just such a wildly beautiful season in terms of the landscape, which maybe sometimes butts up against just the wild negativity that existed, lovingly so. I mean, I think Gabon is probably the most polarizing season in Survivor history. I've never heard anyone say Gabon is just okay. It's either like you absolutely hate it, nobody knows how to play the game, everyone hates each other, etc., worst winner ever, or it's, oh my God, I love how much of a train wreck this is. Sugar and the cookies, forget you, go home, goodbye, eat your rice. There's so many incredible dramatic moments, and Bob is the most lulzy winner on top of a lulzy season. Brian, I imagine you fall somewhere towards the latter, but give me your thoughts on Gabon in general.
So I used to not be in the Gabon is amazing camp. I used to always give pushback for people who love Gabon.
No, Fishback is in the next season.
Exactly. So, but when we were doing the season rewatches, I went back and actually watched it myself, and I fell in love with it, of just the pure chaos of it. Because I think for me, when I'm watching Survivor seasons, I am much more into like the strategic gameplay of it, and Gabon is like an absolute hot mess with that. So I felt like it was so disjointed, I didn't love it as much. But when you're able to just watch it on a binge and know that the show goes on for decades more, and it's like Gabon's going to cancel the show because of how much of a train wreck it is, you're just able to enjoy it for the beautiful mess that it is and the people that are a part of it. And I think, and we'll get to like one person in particular, but I think TikTok has also really glorified my love for Gabon, because there's a couple of key moments from this season that really go viral. I would say like every few months, that I think people that, unless it's just across my TikTok, that I think has really emphasize how fun this season is, and I think really helps a couple of key people in there, if they wanted to, come back for a future season.
Yeah, I do think I've called Survivor 46 one of the memeiest seasons in recent memory. Gabon, I feel like, is the precursor
100%.
to that, where, as you mentioned, a couple of visuals have gone viral even outside of the Survivor realm, but there have been these phrases that have sort of stood the test of time. There have been facial reactions that have done so. So it really does feel like a bit of a cartoon season, despite the fact that, or maybe it's one of those adult cartoons where there's like so much acrimony going on at the same time, which I think people also liked about 46 as well, especially in the wake of the new era, was like Gabon is certainly a season where you have incredibly outspoken people using that outspokenness to talk about how much they do not like the people that are around them. It is such an odd season as well from like a narrative perspective, because you're like, okay, the two main through lines we're getting throughout the season is like, okay, Fong sucks as a tribe. Can they prevail? And at the merge, there is sort of like, to broad base it, a good alliance and an evil alliance where the onions are all the bad people, the connivers, and these are the underdogs of Crystal and Kenny and Susie and Sugar trying to work against them. And it ends up finalizing where both of those narratives kind of get subverted, that the winner is not from Fong. And not to say that the winner was like a huge part of the Onion Alliance. In fact, he was purposely the outermost layer of the Onion Alliance. But still, it's not necessarily that like neat and tidy ending that we get from a bunch of other Survivor seasons, especially because you talk about maybe ways that the narrative had shifted in terms of Survivor storytelling. This, to me, Brian, is going to kick off a few seasons in a row where we get one main character. Yeah, right. Ideally, Survivor, 16 to 18 people from different walks of life stranded together. But Survivor Gabon really shifts the idea of their storytelling with putting the pinup model front and center, much like every teenage boy's wall. Sugar is far and away the star of Gabon. She goes to exile all the time. She's the fulcrum at all these different decisions. She gets given an idol, the only idol this season, which she ends up playing. She ends up, Bob ends up winning the fan favorite prize, but you would imagine that Sugar is obviously in contention there, to the point where she is one of the two people called back to Heroes versus Villains 3 seasons later. So it's a little odd to have all this Sugar content and then get to the end and feel those empty calories when she gets no votes.
Yeah, and that was my biggest hot take when I went back and watched the season again. It was like, I kind of forgot like how good of a player Sugar was through this season. Like, obviously everyone always remembers her crying and everything with her dad and the fight with Corinne, but like, she was actually like a very good player through the season, and she probably should have won if she had a little bit of different jury management a little bit with some of the members of her tribe. But when I was looking through this cast, for me right now, I have a very clear three who I think should be the three people on the ballot, and I'm excited to see if those are the three that we end up putting on, or if I talk myself out of other people, or if you talk me into like other people. Because right now I have a very clear three of, and people that haven't been on, like in my head, like there's Sugar, Randy, Corinne, maybe Corinne, I guess, but like I just don't see them being in the mix. But there's like three other people that genuinely I feel like should come back if they want to, and also if they're not canceled yet. I don't know, that could be a thing too. But if they're not canceled and they want to come back, the three I have in mind I think would be really fun in season 50.
All right, well, let's start cracking into it, and hopefully our picks will leave you smiling ear to ear like Maddie over, Corinne and Sugar being shocked in response to who we pick. I would imagine these are not going to be the three on your list, but we will start with the final three here. One of the more WTF final threes, definitely, to round out a WTF cast. And, of course, Sugar, as we just mentioned, our runner-up, Susie, and Bob. So Sugar, let's just get this out of the way. So Sugar has said in her quarantine questionnaire that she told Dalton Ross, nope, in response to being asked, would you come back for another season? I sleep with 4 pillows and a heating pad, and for as long as I like. I eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and I get to choose the awesome, enlightened people I surround myself with. I enjoy my comfort and loved ones way too much nowadays. I'm good. Then she posted 3 emojis of the earth, but all from different angles for whatever reason. Then a peace sign, then a lipstick kiss. So Sugar appears on Gabon to massive popularity, maybe not amongst her castmates, but she does come back for Heroes versus Villains. And it was rumored for a little bit, but I believe when Sugar appeared on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew at some point, she did become explicit about this, that following her becoming the first boot of Survivor Heroes versus Villains, she went to Ponderosa and she attempted suicide. And so luckily Sugar is okay now. She is thriving. I believe she definitely has a daughter. I'm not sure if she's married or not. And for what it's worth, she does show up to events. When they did the whole For Your Consideration event that spawned this entire process, when Jeff officially announced that 50 would be returnees, Sugar was there alongside some other California alums. So it's not like she necessarily disavows the show, but I think for various reasons, she is good leaving things where they were back in maybe not even 2010, back in, 2008 when Gabon aired.
Wow, I did not know about that, about Sugar. I was about to make jokes about, didn't she like get into a fling with JT and have some fun with that?
So that was true as well. That was, I believe were kicking it prior to Heroes versus Villains. So when that whole like JT cuddle me thing came up, that became really awkward for many reasons.
Right. Okay. Well, I did not know about that about Sugar. That is very, very sad to hear. But yes, I'm glad she's doing well. All the best. I totally agree. I think her not answering the phone if it does ring is probably the best move. Leave Sugar in the Sugar Shack. That's where she should be bottled in her Survivor career.
I mean, that's literally what she was describing, right? It was like, oh, I've got the hammock, I've got my basket of fruit, I've got my hidden immunity idol.
Yeah, I think that's the right move. And we could all, if we want to see our sugar intake, we go to Gabon, and that is the full overdose of sugar that we all we need. And that was a very poor choice of words. I just realized that.
Oh boy, Brian. This is the perfect season for you in many ways. Well, I will not remove your vocal cords, but let's talk about the person who was, I would say, bribed to do so in exchange for her jury vote, but she refused to do so, and perhaps that's what lost her the $1 million by one vote, in the form of Susie. I like Susie. Susie is one of these, like, kind of random Survivor characters that obviously do not permeate your first level of consciousness. They're sort of like the third level down on the Survivor iceberg of, you remember Susie when she won a tub at the auction and stayed in for like 5 seconds? Remember Susie who like ended Bob's combo streak of immunity wins by winning the first and last immunity challenge? Remember Susie, again, who was one vote away from winning $1 million. Susie, who told Corinne to her face when she was on the outs of a minority vote at the swap, yeah, I was probably going to vote for you tonight. Yep. Susie is this wild, under-the-radar enigma of a person that, like, to your earlier point, is she going to be my top-tier pick? No. Would she pique my interest if she was on? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah, I think if she was in like a new era, she would be a lot of mothering. I feel like, especially with the comment to Corinne, they've been, oh my God, there goes mother. I did also think this was a very odd and very funny like Probst moment, and it would have been unbelievable. But he was like, "Is Susie about to win this freaking show?" And that would have been like a great crossroads moment if she found her way also to, like, Winners at War. She's a very interesting person, and it's like she's like kind of also one of like the poster childs of truly like anyone truly can win this game if you catch a little bit of luck in the early going. Because if Susie was on like the wrong tribe, if she was on Fang, she could have been voted off early, and that would have just been her journey.
No, she was on Fang.
She was on Fang?
Yeah, remember, because I think, I'm trying to remember what the order was. I believe that Jillian...
Oh, Crystal picked her like second, right? Overall.
Jillian picked Crystal, and then Crystal picked Susie because she was like a fellow mom. That's
right. But yeah, she was able to survive the chaos of that and then made her way through. But yeah, if she gets on the season of her returnees, like she's falls in that bucket of like who's targeting Susie, and she might snake her way through a long stage of a game. So you just never know. Like I don't think she's likely to be called, but if she showed she can make it 39 days, so she can make it 26.
Not to mention, she does make, like, arguably the turning point move of the season at that second swap when she does turn on Marcus and vote alongside Crystal and Kenny, which then sets up sort of the decimation of the Onions. So, yeah, I do feel like people need to rewatch Gabon for, like, the Susie edit. They need to rewatch the Susie moments because they are so randomly scattered, but they are so interesting to pick apart that I think she would be, out of such a wild card cast, maybe the biggest wild card to bring back, if we're being honest.
I mean, she was almost the biggest wild card in Gabon, and that's like the full of wild cards. So if you tossed her in a season of almost non-wild cards, like who the heck knows what Susie might bring.
All right, so finally, we're going to talk about our winner here in Bob, the oldest winner in Survivor history at 57 years old, and one of the most unique. Here comes this guy, crafty as all get out, to fashion a bow tie out of his own buff. Ends up just kind of putting his head down and being the camp workhorse in the very beginning, which brings him in alongside the Onions and in a safe position. But once his group ends up getting winnowed down, then he turns on the afterburners, and the man, you know, the sort of like dweeby, tall, lanky, 50-something, absolutely goes on a challenge run. He wins, I think, 5 challenges in a row, combining reward and immunity challenges. Now, granted, again, these are not even the modern Survivor stand on a perch for as long as possible types of things. He's winning things like rolling a ball down a hill, making your way through a maze, and trying to put a mask together by feeling things. But for whatever reason, Bob almost had this like Joey amazing like level of being very specifically good at the skills that the Survivor Gabon challenges were providing. When he lost the House of Cards, he thought it was all tumbling down similarly. But due to his relationship with Sugar, which was due in part due to her own relationship with her late father, she spares him, forces fire making at the final four, and Bob prevails. And as a result, scoops up all of the onion votes and ends up winning the game. Bob is at this moment 73 years old. And look, we have tried to be as non-discriminatory towards ages as much as possible. I do have a bit of a line. I think if you're older than the age Rudy was at in the first season of Survivor, that might exclude you a bit.
I was gonna ask how old was Rudy in season 1? Was he in his 70s?
He was 72, and then he was 75 in All Stars.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that would be tough. That would be tough. What was his? Was he called at all for Winners at War, or was he just not even in the mix?
He was not contacted. He did tell Dalton Ross that he would play again in a heartbeat. And actually, those that have been following outside of the Survivor world might know something called, I believe it's called the Durham Survival Challenge, where basically they would do these kind of like live reality games of weekend-long games of Survivor. For a while, it existed like in Bob's backyard, where he has like this big estate where they would go in the woods and do all these things. It featured a bunch of Survivor alums. So like, and I believe Bob may have helped like build the challenges. So really, I know Hunter's being compared to like your Aussies and your Joey Amazings and Jonathans, but he really is more of a new era Bob, I think. And so Bob has certainly, I think, remained active in his watching of the show and the community, which we can't say about other people that we put on. But I do think, unfortunately, the age and the implied physical condition would make him a bit of a liability. I think also maybe the Winners of War thing is because, yes, there were some stars that were asked back, but I do think the popular opinion is an unpopular opinion amongst production, which is that they weren't a big fan of Survivor Gabon. So they're sort of in this like Fiji, Guatemala camp of only bringing back a select amount of people.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. And I would think if they are going to ask back a winner or 2 or 3 for season 50, Bob is not going to be the one that they're like, oh, let's make sure we get Bob on the cast of if we're bringing back some winners. So, again, Bob it's like the perfect winner for this hot mess of a season. You can enjoy him there. I would actually think he's probably in better shape than some of the more younger people that they might almost bring on if they wanted to for some of the seasons, because I feel like he's the type of person that does keep himself in very good physical shape. But like you said, like I think with the challenges nowadays that they're not as like carnival game-ish type things, I don't think he'd probably do as well. But I bet he probably is in decent physical standing that he can probably hold it up. But I don't think we need to see Bob 2.0 into season 50.
I would say maybe put Bob on the challenge team. Don't put him on the dream team, but like have him build some stuff. Have him come up with some interesting physics-based challenges, because I'm sure he could definitely pull some stuff out of the old noodle.
Or let him create the idols. Let him be the arts and craft guy. Just let him create them.
And that's another thing in terms of Bob's game-changing element is, yes, we've had Yowman and Austin from Exile Island create hidden immunity idols, but like Bob actually created ones that you're not saying it's an effing stick at. Right. Like these things looked legitimate, and it was out of things like random beads and resin. Again, that is brand new stuff in the history of Survivor, and it's stuff that has been carried forward as recently as Survivor 46 when they made a fake idol to trick Jess.
Yeah, that's definitely Bob's legacy. It would be more so almost than winning is like being almost the fake idol master. That's definitely going to stand the test of time.
All right, well, let's move on to our jury. 7 of these wild people. So building our way up, we have Marcus, who was the doctor that was in this golden position until the second swap blindsided him. We have his partner in crime in Charlie. We have, of course, Randy, the curmudgeonly videographer, who is one of the biggest villains in Survivor history. We have alongside him, Corinne, one of the most certainly snarky, cutting, and venomous players in Survivor history when it comes to her words. We have Crystal Cox, the former Olympian and former medal winner who proceeded to suck at nearly every challenge in the game. We have Kenny, a video game champion who ends up becoming a gamer in a very different right as he becomes a power player towards the end of the game. And we have our final juror in the form of Maddie, this kind of go with the flow, young bro, even though I'll talk about him. There are some interesting quirks to his personality that I think go forgotten, who arguably got screwed out of $1 million because Sugar makes this last minute decision and sends him into fire. Like Sugar, I will get our returnees out of the way here. Of course, Randy does come back for Survivor Heroes versus Villains, and it does not go great, Bob. Oh, wait, Bob was not on that season. Of course, Randy gets voted out first from the Villains, burns his buff on the way out. He has gone forward to say, including his quarantine questionnaire, that he regretted going back so quickly because it was just not a great experience for him. And so, when asked if he would come back, Randy says, in true Randy fashion, I would make the trip to Fiji and begin the game. After the marooning in my first confessional, I would quit. Then I would drink and eat and play golf and scuba dive for the next 39 days or 29 days with Mark Burnett paying for everything. So, yeah, I think a pretty trolly answer, Brian, to say that Randy's days are done.
Yeah, and honestly, I do agree. I wish Randy said no to Heroes Villains so quickly, and we got to see him like on a later season where maybe we could have had a little bit more of a gap in between his time, and like if he was popped up on like a Game Changers much later on, I think that would have been a lot more fun for Randy. But he's a character, and it's like I mean, you call him one of the most notorious villains. He's like the most unique villain because he's like a villain of humor and personality, but not really of a game. Like he's such a unique person. Obviously, like the wedding videographer puts the cherry on top of it all. But I just love he's still pretty much very involved in Survivor. I see him on Twitter all the time. I think he's very in tune with what's happening in the new era. So I do actually think he could do pretty well. I think he's still pretty up to date. But yeah, I'd be stunned if his name popped up on the list.
Well, yeah. When he was asked about, do you still keep up with Survivor? He says, I watch. I have to watch. As much as I don't like what has become of my favorite show, I have to watch. And yeah, Randy certainly brought his sense of Randiness into Twitter, which I feel like is just Randy in an app. Where, I remember he made the infamous video of Donathan struggling with the balls in the opening of Ghost Island. He did actually have some commendations for season 46, I think because of those Gabon comparisons and because of the acrimony that they are bringing. And yeah, to your point, Randy is so freaking funny. Like, for example, in the infamous cookie moment when, Randy is handing out the cookies and Sugar ends up taking his and giving it to Maddie. Jeff recaps it, and then Randy just immediately turns to Jeff and says, you want to repeat that? Like, I love the fact that this guy was so incredibly outspoken. The fact that he went to, and we got so close to the loved ones visit for him. And of course, infamously, especially at the time, the person Randy loved the most in the world was not a person, it was a dog, to the point where Randy's like +1s for the finale and reunion were all random fans. So Randy is incredibly unique from a social perspective in particular, but he was well liked. He was like a low-key good challenge performer. I remember him in like the random water lacrosse challenge when he was an absolute beast. This is the king of Gabon for a brief period of time. And the fact is, he sort of is like Judd to me from Guatemala, where he is kind of remembered as a villain in personality, but he was loyal to the people he wanted to be loyal to. He did end up flipping on the Fongs, but it was more so because he saw it as a sinking ship.
Yeah, and you can almost view his way out if it was like someone else as like a sympathetic bullying type thing, because he was the one that Bob crafted the fake idol for when there was basically no need for it. Like Randy had no power. There was no shot in the dark back then that he could have played to save himself. So if that was like someone else that had more fan love, they would be like, oh my God, how do you do this to poor Randy? But it was Randy, so people were able to laugh about it. And it was like a much different vibe moment. So that, Randy's, I could easily see why he got on the show, and I could easily see why he will not get on another show.
Let's turn to the villainess above him in Corinne. When asked if she would come back, Corinne has of course, documented through her various podcasts in the past that she was asked back for Heroes versus Villains, declined that. She was asked back for Karamoan, said yes, and perhaps went on to regret it. She does become the merge boot there, and unfortunately, one of those rare circumstances where she does not make the jury. She's conscripted to sitting in the audience during that very, very awkward reunion. And then she does come back alongside someone that has already made the ballot in Eliza for The Amazing Race. But when asked if she'd like to come back this time, she says, I don't think I'm in a place in life where I would want to expose myself to the career dangers that now exist from going on the show. But if they got Lynn Spillman back, I bet she could convince me. For those that don't know, Lynn Spillman was the person that cast the first 38 seasons of Survivor before Jesse Tannenbaum and sort of Jeff Probst in tow took over. So yeah, suffice to say, I think the green M&M here on Corinne's rider will go a bit unfulfilled, and therefore I don't think she's coming back.
Are there that many career risks with going on Survivor? Like, I get it with like Big Brother and like the live feeds. I guess if you're someone like Corinne, there could be some career risk. But
I think as honestly, the fan bases have become a bit more mirror images of each other. I mean, we've seen people slide into the reviews of other people's businesses, writing to their bosses. Corinne in her quarantine questionnaire, ironically enough, like really talked about the detrimental effects that can come with like Survivor sometimes exploiting human drama and emotion for the sake of ratings, her words. And so she does feel like why she liked The Amazing Race was that it was much more about, building up each other, running your own race, etc., rather than necessarily tearing down other people and using that for the entertainment of millions of people. Again, it is wild that this is being said about Corinne, but she is a complicated individual, Brian Cohen.
No, she is. And she's like very much the polar opposite of what a lot of the criticism is with the new era, that it's all family fun and like kumbaya. Like Corinne will take the kumbaya and throw it in the fire. Like that's very much not her vibe. So if they really wanted to spice that up and go against the grain, she would be the perfect person. But to her point, maybe she'd be afraid of what people would write in her Yelp reviews. So I could see her wanting to stay away from that.
All right, well, let's dote on some of these other jury members, because now that, again, our actual returnees are out of the way, we can focus on these beloved figurative returnees. Yes. Where do you want to start, Brian?
I mean, let's start with, I think, the number one person on the board. And you can make an argument. I think she's like top 10 on the board across the entire series of people who should come back. And that's Crystal Cox. Like, she is an absolute lightning rod of one-liners, of quotes, of just all the attention you would want, and such a fun person to have on the show. And again, like to my earlier point about like with TikTok going viral, her confessional to Randy, again, maybe it's my Survivor TikTok algorithm that gets it a lot, but I see that pop up a lot. And I would say she has a better chance of returning now almost than ever before. I just think her popularity in like a niche way has grown so much that I could see her being in the mix, especially if they're really going to pull from old era people. And obviously with the diversity expectation now that they have for the new era, if they want to have old era people that fit these buckets, like Crystal, and then we'll get to Kenny, are two perfect people that would allow them to do that and be such great people and entertaining people to have on this show. And to see the redemption of Crystal Cox, maybe now she's like going to start winning challenges and running well and not like, being last and everything. It would be just an unbelievable thing to have Crystal back on our television sets in 2025 or 6, whenever this might air.
Yeah, I mean, she's Survivor Kagayam, but better because she has brains, brawn, beauty, and blazing speed, as she quoted in, I believe, her first confessional in Survivor Gabon. That's the thing, is that I wonder if on the one hand, Crystal was cast as just the sort of ex-pro athlete angle. Of course, at the time, she was a gold medalist in track and field. And so there was, this very fun aspect to it. And then that gets completely thrown out the window the second she has to clomp up a hill with these big ass platform shoes and is getting beat out by all of these other plebs on the way up. Thus began Crystal, according to the Survivor Wiki, only won 2 challenges and lost 19 challenges over the course of the season, which was, honestly, I know that we did, at the time of recording this, the defining moment of Survivor Gabon in this week's Summer of Survivor podcast, but like, that is almost the thematics of Survivor Gabon represented in terms of expectations versus reality of, you would think that this Olympic athlete would just between her athleticism, stamina, and endurance, just absolutely lay waste to the competition. But it was quite the opposite. She couldn't dunk a basketball. She
Nope.
held up a pole for 5 seconds. Like, it was incredibly,
Incredible.
like, it was almost surreal, this storyline. But on top of that, it wasn't just that athletic portion. To your point, Crystal has a personality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So many iconic lines, to your point. Eat your rice, forget you, go home, goodbye. Even before that, you made my life a living hell from day one. Like, Crystal, now granted, I don't know what that would have done for her winning chances, but she
Hmm.
had such a great personality. Again, it's that outspokenness that we value in this
Yeah.
cast that was represented in her. I love the fact that she also got to wield power as well. I think her and Kenny are such an interesting mishmash of a pair because it truly represents those aspects of Survivor of these two people would never give each other a time of day in real life, and now they're working side by side. So, since this season, of course, Crystal was controversially stripped of her gold medal after she admitted to using anabolic steroids from, I think, 2001 to 2004. Now I believe she works I think she may have worked for like the North Carolina government or like a medical facility.
Hmm.
She does say that she would play again. She
Great.
admits she hasn't watched a lot of Survivor recently, but she says, I would definitely give it another shot. I have the heart of a champion. Last time I made it to top 6, so I feel I have more to prove. Yes, it's been 12 years, but the desire has not changed. I'm definitely older, wiser, smarter, and hungrier than I was 12 years ago. That might be debatable because she was fairly hungry in Gabon. Crystal is 45, which I feel, especially with the people we put forward, is a
Hmm.
good age. And I do
Yeah.
believe, I have no idea what this is, but I saw the NMB Survivor Challenges, which I guess are a bunch of, it's like a summer camp based off of the show Survivor. She was doing some stuff along there. I don't know if it's like the Durham Warriors Challenge where she was like actually playing Survivor, but if she's doing Survivor adjacent events in
Hmm.
2023, that's not completely out of the orbit that she shouldn't be involved here.
No, and that's great to hear. I love to hear that she would come back. I don't want her to be wiser though. Like, I don't want her to like have some of the shine
I
kind of
mean,
come off
it's
her.
appropriate to animals in Africa. I don't see how much a tiger can change its stripes.
Yeah, like maybe be a little bit calmer, but like not that much because be your Crystal Cox self. We don't want to see anything different. But Crystal and Kenny, they were like the two people that matched each other freaks, and we want to see them both back. At least for me.
Well, then let's finish off the 1-2 punch here and talk
Yeah.
about Kenny, a Super Smash Brothers player that proceeded to use all his specials in the middle portion of the game and then end up getting taken out towards the end when Crystal is idled out of the game and then, or sorry, Crystal, they play the idol on Maddie and Crystal's voted out and turned on
Yep.
by Sugar, and then Kenny is voted out in turn. Give me your thoughts on Kenny.
Kenny's a lot of fun. I think the problem with Kenny's chances of getting S back, kind of similar to Maddie that we can get to, is now he's just very much in a large pool of like a similar archetype. For Kenny, it's like the gamer nerd, the smart guy. That's now just been a very much a staple, especially in like the new era with like the Christian mold of that type of person, the socially awkward, like how are they going to do? They're very smart. They know how to do puzzles. So like that's like to me like the biggest holdback for Kenny getting called back is there's just so many people in that bucket that they can choose from. But Kenny was like one of the OGs of that of like I don't know how to talk to people, and now
Yeah.
I'm like masterminding everything. I think for Kenny, his better chances of coming back was much earlier, and if it didn't happen, like I would love to see him back because I think him being wiser and like a much more like smarter and like mature person, I think would be a much better player, and he's already a pretty good player in his own right in Gabon. So I think if that version of Kenny came to season 50, he could actually be pretty dangerous as he's, I would think, matured in the last 15 years.
Yeah, so he is 38 right now. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't really underlined in the way that it certainly is nowadays when contestants go through metamorphosis, something like Emily Flippin in 45. But yeah, I remember Kenny like awkwardly eating these little termites next to Michelle Chase, being like, I don't really know how to socialize with anybody. And
Yep.
then him going on to become the power broker of the post merge, where him and Crystal swing Susie over. They bring in Maddie and Sugar, and then Kenny wins an immunity as well. And they kind of take out most of the onions. And then it gets to a point where they're so threatening that now Kenny is the odds-on favorite to win, where they have to take him out, which again is wild comparing both him to the beginning of the game, but also his archetype. I mean, this guy looks like he could be in Skinny Ryan's basement on a LAN party, and those types didn't necessarily do well on Survivor, let alone win. You had like Rob Cesternino again in that sort of super fan nerd mode becoming a big player of the season, but otherwise they were more few and far between before we got to the Cochrans and the Adam Kleins, etc. So I agree that Kenny is definitely someone who stands out of that archetype for me. When asked if he would play again, he did play it cool with Dalton. He said, not sure, honestly. I think if I was in the right time and the right place, couldn't say at the moment. Should note, though, at the time of the interview, he still does watch Survivor. He still loves the game. And to your point about if he was asked back earlier, he was an alternate for Heroes versus Villains. And I don't know if it was to the extent where he was like an on-set alternate, like a Natalie Bolton, but he was very heavily in consideration, and it just didn't align at the right time. I do agree that maybe there are now other superfan power brokers that would take his spot. But for right now, Kenny might be one of my mains when it comes to picking people on this list.
Would he have been a villain? Like, I mean, he's not really a hero, I guess, from Gabon. I guess he would have been a villain. That would have been his slot on that.
Yeah, because it's interesting because as much fun as it was to watch Kenny kind of come into his own, Gabon kind of ends a little awkwardly for him. If you remember, where like at the final 5, he tries to convince Bob to give him the immunity necklace in exchange for
very
him.
Dreams-like, right?
Yeah, or they just saw Eric do it as well. And so I think it was really, you talk about a shot in the dark, a last gasp ploy. But then after he's voted out at the tribal council, he like kind of rakes Bob over the coals for not doing that, basically saying like, how dare you do the thing, not do the thing that will allow me to get rid of you instantly. So it was kind of an odd ending for Kenny, but it also fittingly ended sort of the Mad King arc of Daenerys Targaryen, where he started on the outskirts, made his way from the Great Grass Plains, and then kind of laid waste for a while before being stabbed in the back.
Yeah. I mean, he had quite the journey. He really did. He really exemplifies this season kind of more than anyone else. It was a little awkward and probably wouldn't fly in 2024, the way he was like picking people for his tribe just because they were hot. I feel like that wouldn't go very well if that happened in the new era. But that's Gabon era Survivor.
More like a boner when it comes to Kenny's aesthetic. Well, let's move on to Maddie here, because again, Maddie is such a unique case. Because again, on paper, this guy's like personal trainer, yogi, California bro. You would think, oh yeah, this is sort of your generic Control F replace Mactor that they brought in for this era of Survivor. But Maddie's got some quirks. He had this weird like turkey gobble laugh that he would have at certain times. I remember specifically when he was doing the challenge with Bob, where he basically saved his own skin, where if he had lost that challenge single-handedly, he would have gone home. He would have been double swap screwed. And he's going like, ah, ha, 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 ha. Like there was just this kind of freak that low-key came out of Maddie Whitmore. Of course, I think the people most remember him for is first, of course, the iconic GIF where after Marcus is being voted out, the Coda tribe comes over the hill. Corinne and Sugar are aghast, and Maddie is grinning from ear to ear, much like he did when he saw that elephant. But also the fact that he has one of the warmest loved ones visit. His girlfriend, Jamie, visits the camp, and he decides to propose to her down by the dock. Spoiler alert, Brian, it did not work out. Much unlike his performance in the Final Four, it went a bit up in flames.
So, like, when he got back, they just broke up, or they got married and divorced? Like, what does go up in flames mean?
I do not believe the wedding ever happened.
Okay. Well.
Oh, no, wait. No, sorry. He did get married in June 2009. So I think, though, maybe I'm misremembering here. Maybe he is still married. I'm not entirely sure.
Love is alive.
He did not talk about it on his quarantine questionnaire, so maybe that's saying something.
I mean, there was just no way Maddie hasn't been contacted before, right? Like, he just seems like the exact person that Probst would fall in love with, that would want to see back 2 or 3 times. Like, he had to have been in the mix for some other seasons.
So on that note, when asked in his quarantine questionnaire what his biggest regret is that apparently the aforementioned Lynn Spillman had asked him at some point if he was interested in playing Survivor again, and he said no. So I don't know if it's anything as formal as we've gotten from other people of like, he was in the mix for heroes versus villains. I would imagine it would probably be that, maybe a Karamoan, but even then, that's like 10 seasons later. That's still, the bloom's a little bit off the rose. But that being said, got some good news and some bad news. The good news is Maddie says if they ask me to go on Survivor again, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Great.
The bad news is, when asked, do you still watch Survivor? He says, the truth is, I never saw Survivor before I was on it, and I never saw it after I was on it, but I did watch my entire season, though. I think I would much rather play Survivor than watch other people have all the fun.
That is amazing. His only experience of Survivor is Gabon. What a perspective of life he must have to have no knowledge of anything else before or after. What a world to live in, just a Survivor Gabon world. Unbelievable for Maddie.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, that doesn't necessarily disqualify him. I think we've certainly put people on this list beforehand that it's very unconfirmed if they still watch the show, but this is perhaps the most casual person that would ever be cast on Survivor 50, considering that he would legitimately look around thinking it's a new player season, because he would not know, unless it's someone from Survivor Gabon alongside him, any of the other 19 people on the mat with him.
Yeah, that would be pretty tough. To walk back in with so many preconceived or pre-existing relationships and just be like that complete newbie in the mix. I mean, he's got like the charm, at least for did back then, and the personality, you would think, to kind of incorporate himself in, but that would be quite the uphill battle if he really just has no connection to anyone, unless somehow someone else from Gabon pops up with him. That would be a pretty tough challenge for Maddie. And he was really high on my board. I'm stunned we haven't seen him since. I guess that's because of his own notion, but he would be a lot of fun. But also similar to Kenny, he is very similar to so many other people of like that surfer bro type vibe that at this point he's probably like super washed down the list of who he's probably competing against for that slot.
Yeah, it's tough, because I would say that something that might buoy that is the sort of unfinished business aspect of his narrative over some of these other bros. He was so close. It's almost Devin Pinto-like, where like, ironically enough, we're enough for a fire-making challenge. That's how he lost the game, ordinarily when he probably would have won if a final three had gone the way that it should. So I do think there is some odd personality stuff to Maddie that would make me interested in seeing him on a second try. He is also still a personal trainer and still a yogi, so I do think he's very physically fit and would be very adept for these challenges. He's only 45 years old, so I think we'll loop back to him. To your point, Brian, he was on my list as well, but I really go back and forth, especially considering a couple of other people I want to talk about as to whether he'll make it at the end.
Yeah, so we got two more. We got Charles and Marky here.
Yeah, Charles and Marky. They're portmanteau, I should say. Poor Charlie. I feel so sad in saying this, but I think the only reason Charlie would get on is if they thought they were asking Charlie from 46 and instead asked the other lawyer named Charlie and brought him on and said, I liked Charlie. It's just unfortunate because his entire freaking edit was about how much he loved Marcus. And so there's not a lot of there. So it only makes sense that we talk about Marcus, because, Brian, I'm not sure like how tuned you are into the edgic of it all, but let me take you back to the fall of 2008. Please. Marcus, for the first half of the season, there's a lot of hope out there in so many ways, including that Marcus would be the winner of Survivor Gabon. People thought from an edit perspective, he's getting all this typical winner content. He's, doing incredibly well. He's athletic. He's the leader of his group. He's strategically sound. The day that Marcus was voted out was one of the most surprising moments in Survivor history from an edgic perspective. Nobody saw it coming, especially given the circumstances, right? That they have basically a second swap. Like, they have a brief merge and then they randomly divide into teams again. And Marcus ends up getting screwed over despite the fact that he has a personal connection with Crystal. It all goes south and he ends up getting put on the jury. And so as a result, I think a lot of people felt unfulfilled potential from Marcus. Now, Marcus has dallied a bit in reality TV. Did you know about this, Brian?
No, but I'm very excited by the way you phrased that, so please tell.
Have you ever heard of a show called Labor of Love?
If he's on it, I would assume it's not to do with pregnancy, but I don't know. You tell me.
No, it does. So it was hosted by Kristen
Fantastic.
Davis of Sex and the City. So it was about a woman who was more mature when it comes to her career compared to your typical Bachelor and Bachelorette contestants. Before the Golden Bachelor, there was this, but she specifically wanted to find a man to start a family with. That was the like express intent purpose of this entire love-seeking exposition, and Marcus was on it. So this was back in I think 2020. He made it all the way to 3rd place.
How was his edgic on that season? Were people very surprised that he didn't get the win there either?
More like his edging more than his edgic. Because I remember very distinctly, the first thing they all had to do was go into a random grody-ass trailer and provide a semen sample to be like analyzed for genetic abnormalities.
Oh my goodness gracious! Did the winner of the show and the lucky lady, did they bear a child? Do we have an update on that?
Nope, they did not. They went the way of Maddie and Jamie, which I did confirm they are divorced. Yeah, the person in the end decided to just pursue in vitro fertilization on their own.
Well, there you go. Okay, good for them. What a show.
So will we implant Marcus into the womb of Survivor 50? I mean, the guy, again, has a lot of unfinished business. He felt like he was on the track. He was in the middle of the most dominant alliance at that point, but the cards fell in the particular direction they did, and he had everything cut out from under him. I do think if we were to bring back people from that narrative perspective, he would be right up there for me in terms of this cast. He is 44 years old, which again puts him in line with some of these other people we would want to bring back. When asked if he would want to return, he did admit, realistically, I'm probably out of the TV game for good, but Survivor is definitely the one thing that would make me reconsider, since it speaks to the adventure streak I'll probably always have. So this is his one exception. This is his hall pass, Brian.
Yeah, and he was one of the 3 people that for me screamed like, give him a second chance. I'm almost surprised he wasn't on like the second chance ballot. He seems like that perfect type of person that screams like, give him another chance. He could probably do very well. So I hope he would pick up the call if they do call. I feel like Probst, again, it's kind of similar to Maddie, would love for him to come back. I think he was one of Probst's, I'm sure, biggest gripes from this season is that someone like Marcus didn't go much further than compared to some of the other people. So I would love to see him back. I think he probably do very well. I don't know how likely the call is coming, but I would love to see a Marcus 2.0.
Yeah, well, I think especially a certain audience would want to, considering that, I don't know if you remember this, Brian, but Marcus was part of the most uncensored moment in Survivor history.
That more uncensored than the peanut butter moment.
Yes. Keep that first syllable, though, because it was like a blink and you miss it, but at least when it first aired, Marcus was running through a challenge in nothing but his underwear, and the tip of little Marcus peeks out for like the brief smidge of seconds, and it is unblurred. It is uncut in a manner of speaking. It is out there in the open.
Maybe that's how we got on Labor of Love. The lady saw that. I was like, ooh, that could be good.
Yeah, she's like surfing channels on Paramount Plus. Like, all right, who has the most attractive dongs that I could have? Give me a child.
Yeah, you go to you flip through the sperm folder, you flip through the pee folder. Get them both.
All right, well, let's flip over to the pre-jury folder here, and we can sort of yada yada through. There's a couple that I do want to highlight here, but in order of finish, we do have the aforementioned termite-eating Michelle, who had one of the oddest reunion moments ever when she talked about a random dream she had. We have, of course, Jillian, who had the elephant dung and proved its capacities from a combustible perspective. We have Paloma, who was, I believe, got her ass handed to her by Crystal during a physical challenge and was first voted out of Coda. We have the 2 people that I still have a tough time telling apart in Jackie and Kelly, who were also part of this Onion Alliance, but ended up getting kind of sent over to Fong and then voted out. We have, of course, GC, the golden child, the man of the giant t-shirt, who said, sure, I'll be the leader. And then 5 minutes later said, I don't want to be the leader, who disappeared before going to tribal council for a significant portion of time.
Yep.
Absolutely representative of just the hot mess that Fong was. We have, of course, the late Dan K. May he rest in peace. But Brian, the one I really want to highlight from this pre-merge group is Ace. Our ace in the hole, or as Sugar wrote, she took out in the, and that was what she wrote on her vote for him. Ace was this cocky, egotistical, braggadocious, implaceable, accented man I think he was a photographer at the time, claimed he was so much better than everybody else, found the idol, and was voted out with it in Sugar's bag. I kind of feel bad, Brian, because I feel like had Coach not come along
Yeah.
one season later, we could have seen Ace on Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah, that was the exact comparison I had in mind also. And if he there was the coach factor and like just the pre-merge factor, it is very hard to have such a lasting impact as like a pre-merger, especially with so many of the wacky personalities that this season brought post-merge that you kind of almost forget about Ace by the time you're dealing with Crystal and Kenny and Sugar and everyone. So Ace gets forgotten, but he has like also one of the more iconic confessionals I would say ever when he's doing it. Like the elephant isn't like an elephant just like walking across the water. There's a wild moment with that. So Ace would be a lot of fun to see back in the mix. I mean, I guess you probably have the update. What is Ace's like post Survivor career looking like?
Surprisingly, I don't think he was given a quarantine questionnaire, but it was revealed that to the heroes versus villains of it all, apparently Ace was cast for it, but was cut 3 days before filming.
Oh
Maybe
wow.
he was one of the people shuffled around for Russell or Randy at the last second. He is 43 years old. I have no idea what he's doing now, if he still watches Survivor, if he would want to do it.
Oh, so he was that young during Gabon. He's only 43 now. He was what, 26, 27 then?
He was
That's crazy.
27 years old. Yeah,
Wow.
I would imagine, because I'm pretty sure as we were watching his hair grow along, I'm pretty sure he shaved his head coming in, because he also resembles a Bond villain in so many mannerisms, between the European accent, between the bald head. Like, he is a Blofeld in a manner of speaking. So I would say for me, he might be like fifth or maybe even fourth on my ballot. I think there is potential there, and it's more so this idea of like, we could have had him back, but we never did. And I kind of want to see him continue to bring villainy to the show. But I also just want to highlight him because I feel like he sometimes gets forgotten amidst all the mess that the jury phase provided.
Yeah, I think if you're talking, especially in this era of the show, like some of the more notorious pre-merge people, he's definitely right up there with some of the interesting people that if he did survive a few more votes and was a little bit more in the mix, I think the Ace aura would be a lot different in the Survivor community. It would be a lot more notorious. But even right now, he's still a very charismatic figure.
Yes. So let's talk about these players, Brian. So you came in with a list. Has the needle moved at all? Give me one person that you want to put on the short list here.
I mean, like I said, for me, like my number one person that honestly, if I had like one pick across Survivor that I would want to see back, I could make the argument it is Crystal. So I would definitely put Crystal as one of the people that I just need to see play another season of Survivor again.
I agree. Unfortunately, she will not have a lot of rice to eat because of the way the new era is structured, but I'm sure she's going to light up our screens if and hopefully when she gets on. I will add Kenny onto that. I know that I do see your reservations about would he get cast, but I think if we're just putting people in for the mix, and especially from a fan vote perspective, Kenny is one of those one and done players that I think for me has brought so much what if. And the fact that he didn't necessarily say a flat no to Dalton is all I need to basically say yes to him.
Yeah, and then I came in, those are the top two on my list, and I came in with the third as Maddie. But the fact that he has literally not watched anything before or after, it either moves him either further up my draft board or down. And I guess it's probably down. I feel like you have to have some semblance of a knowledge of the show to get cast and should be cast on the season 50 iconic season like that. So I think because of that, I would drop him in favor of someone like Marcus, I think, as the third person. But now I'm a little more torn as like who that third person should be.
I would probably put Marcus on there. I think that he is a person that a lot of people have been wanting to see get a second chance for a while, but just due to the circumstances of everything that happened. And it's not like he would only get on due to that. I mean, this was somebody that seemed to have a lot of his ducks in a row. And I think he could have that capacity to bring him back. And again, he said that Survivor would be his exception of appearing on TV again. So I think I would want to see Marcus get thrown in there. And I agree. I'm in and out on Maddie. I'm in and out on Ace. We don't need to put a fourth in here, but if you're feeling really strongly a certain way to put someone on there, we could definitely throw on a fourth.
I mean, a fun fourth, again, there's no way she would get asked in a million years, I don't think, but Susie in season 50 with like the crop of people that she would be on the show with would be very funny. So if you're doing something for the joke, for the vibe, for the meme, Susie kind of almost represents Gabon in a way. So it would be kind of fun to have her on the ballot from Gabon.
Interesting. I didn't think of the troll option. I mean, again, this is you, Brian Cohen. All right, so let's put your feet to the fire here. So I think it's coming down to Maddie or Susie. Because Maddie could also be the joke as well, though. We're putting forward the guy who has not watched any Survivor besides 13 episodes of Survivor Gabon.
Yeah, I just think there's so many other people throughout the season that you're going to get on that you're going to put on this ballot that are similar to Marcus and Maddie, and there's just no one who is like Susie. So I think for the Gabon of it all, I feel like Susie should be on there with Kenny and Crystal, and I think that should be the three.
So all right, we will put 63-year-old Susie Smith.
Let's do it. She's gonna get some votes. I'm telling you, people are gonna like Susie. Let's throw some votes on her.
All right, we'll put it on the ballot. Let's see, she was 1 vote away from winning Gabon. I think she might be many votes away from making it out to the ballot, but I'm happy to be surprised. Last question.
Probst thought that too. You never know.
Last question, Brian. Anybody from this season that you would want to see on another show besides Survivor?
Well, I mean, is there another put Marcus on like Love Island? See how he does over there.
I'm pretty sure he's married at this point.
Okay, well maybe not then.
I would say put Randy on Love Island. I think that would be incredible.
I mean, Crystal, as bad as she is on Survivor challenges, watching her do the challenge could be kind of fun. Seeing how she would do.
Did she miss her boat on Champs versus Pros alongside the other professional athletes?
Yeah, she could have been with Lola. Or Lola, is that her name? I don't know.
Lolo.
Yeah, that could have been. She could have been right there. Put her in the
Yeah, because Lolo, much like Crystal, was first an Olympian and then became a CBS reality contestant. So they could have been twin paths. They were two ships in the night. I would also say, Corinne. Listen, I know people feel a certain way about Corinne. Did she get too personal? I could see it, but also imagine her delivering speeches at traders' roundtables. Don't we want to see that at least a little bit?
That could be fun. That could be very fun. Her in the breakfast, getting the pastry, having her binder, assessing all the people. That could be a good time.
All right, well, Brian, let's officially close the binder on Survivor Gabon, as tomorrow, we mentioned him earlier, we're going to get to Coach, and we're going to get to the other castaways of Survivor Tocantins. I'll be joined by Frail Mary herself, Mary Kwiatkowski, to break down the cast of Survivor Tocantins and find out who could and should come back from that season that's already produced a lot of returning players. We'll see if they're coming back alongside maybe some other people that should have. Brian, who would be on your short list to recommend from Survivor Tocantins?
It's very interesting because obviously all the major people have played, if not once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times at this point. So if you're looking for some new people to try to get out of there, you're going to be kind of hard pressed because I don't know who else you would want to grab. I would love to see Erin again. I think that would be like the first name. That would be like a fun person to bring back as opposed to like the JTs and the coaches and the Tysons and Stevens. I think if you had Erin in the mix, I think she could be kind of fun.
All right, well, we shall see if that list corroborates or if we're going to go off telling our own wild stories about our times paddling or podcasting alongside the Amazon River. Hold on to your butts, everybody. Tocantins coming your way tomorrow. For now, Brian, this was great. Thank you for bringing the energy that a podcast about Survivor Gabon deserves. Of course, at the time this is being released, you are in the rare lull between challenge seasons, but I know your coverage of All-Stars 4 had just finished.
Yeah, we would have just wrapped up All-Stars 4, crowning a champion there. I know we're building towards Survivor 50, but the challenge is a monumental season coming up. That'll be the next one that Allie and I are talking about. It'll be season 40 of the challenge, so that'll be a lot of fun. I think that should be coming sometime this summer, so subscribe to that, robbinswebsite.com/challenge feed. And we're on YouTube also, so you can check it out there too.
All right. And you can check us out, of course, on YouTube and the Survivor Only feed and the RHAP feed. That's where you'll find all these lovely daily podcasts, which will keep on a roll into the Brazilian highlands tomorrow as we talk Survivor Tocantins with Frail Mary. Thank you all so much for listening. Brian, thank you. Let us know your thoughts, as per usual, in the comments. But until tomorrow, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.